Good morning here at Wishwell Farms. I am currently standing in our largest greenhouse on the farm. It holds 1,000 plants, and today we will be putting in our largest tomato planting of 2025. As soon as my son Gavin and Emma show up for work, we will begin the transplanting process in greenhouse number 2. This house is 30 feet wide by 148 feet long and has 500 Bato buckets, which means it holds 1,000 plants. As you can see, there are 5 rows here. We are only planting the first 3 rows today, so about 600 plants. And I think Tassie's gonna give us a hand today. Are you gonna help us out in the greenhouse today, Tassie? You want to? You wanna help? And if you're curious why we're not planting all 1,000 plants at once, it's because we have found that it's almost too many tomatoes for us to move when they all start coming on at once. So for our operation, it works best to have the 600 plants coming on in early June. And then when we need more tomatoes later on in June, early July, the next 2 rows will kick in, and that'll give us the amount of tomatoes we need to meet the demand at all of our farmers markets in Columbus, Ohio. All right, let's go take a look at the plants that we're gonna be transplanting today. All right, this is our starter house. We also call it our transplant house. We just seeded bell peppers yesterday. And if we get all these tomato plants transplanted at a decent time this morning, we're hoping to seed some eggplant today as well. So there's the plants that are gonna be transplanted today. There's about 720. You can see some of them have already reached the top of these 18-inch bamboo stakes. And they have little flower clusters forming at the top. So they're really stretching right now. I wish I could have planted them a couple days ago, actually. They're getting crowded in here, so we need to get them into the Dutch Bato buckets right away so they can grow properly. If we leave them in here too long, they'll just keep stretching upwards because of being overcrowded. But they look really good, really healthy. I'm happy with how these plants grew in here this year. Tassie, are you ready to go inside? Let's go. Get out of here, cat. Darn cat sneaks in here, gets locked in. All right, let's go inside. So the breeze has picked up quite a bit, and I don't like that because of how tall and tender these plants are. When we move them from one house to the next house, when it's breezy like this, it's not good for them. And it's a cold breeze. It is above freezing, but it's in the low 40s right now, so it's a little chilly. But it'll warm up really quickly in the greenhouses, and they're only gonna be outside exposed to the cold wind for like 5 seconds, whatever it takes to go that 50 feet. So the plants will be loaded into these blue wagons. I can get 4 flats in each wagon, so 40 plants, and then we'll roll them into the greenhouse and distribute them throughout the rows for transplanting. All right, everybody is here. We're in the middle of moving plants, and I forgot to mention the varieties that we're planting. We've already taken over Navarro, and this is the last of Ferraria. And then we're gonna move into Geronimo. And in the back, we have Torero. So they're using the blue wagons. I'm just gonna carry over a flat at a time by hand. We're setting the plants on the buckets, and we'll just move them as we plant. I don't like to put them down here on this gravel, because it just gets up in the roots, and there's like plant debris and mixed in there from prior crops. So the first half of this row 2 is going to be Navarro, and then we're switching over to Ferraria. And we have plenty of Ferraria to finish up this row and start coming back on row 3. And then we're going to move into Geronimo, and this row will be Torero. All right, got the last of Ferraria here. This process goes pretty quickly. I haven't even had to haul any plants. I'm kind of just directing where they go and making sure we mark the beginning and the end of different varieties. And as soon as we get all the plants brought over here, we will all jump in and help each other with the transplanting. We're making some progress. Just getting the last of the Geronimo right now. And then we just have to bring over about a half row of Torero and we can start planting. Ah, that looks better. All the tomato plants have been removed except maybe 10 flats of Torero. We might need those for row 4. We decided to go ahead and plant a 4th row. These are leftovers from greenhouse planting number 1. So you can see how, well, these were actually the runts. I was gonna throw these away, but I decided to keep them just in case I needed them. But I am obviously not going to need them, so I will be throwing those out, unfortunately. All right, let's go take a look at Gavin and Emma doing the transplanting, and we'll show you the process we go through to get them in the Dutch Bato buckets. So here's what it looks like with 800 tomato plants distributed throughout the greenhouse on top of the Dutch Bato buckets. So if you're not familiar with hydroponics, these are the Dutch Bato buckets, and this is perlite, and it's dry right now. We don't pre-wet it. We grow our plants in 4-inch rock wool cubes. Well, actually they're started in these 1.5-inch starter cubes, and then when they're about 3 inches tall, we transplant them into the 4-inch cubes, and they remain in there until the transplant has fully grown for about 6 to 7 weeks, and then we bring them out here and set them in the Dutch Bato buckets. So we just set them in the perlite. So we just grab the cube out of the flat, stick it down in the perlite, and then we're jamming down the bamboo stakes to make sure they're anchored in good. After we finish transplanting, we will come back and we'll turn the water on and make sure there's nothing plugged up, and then we'll put the tripper stakes into the cube, and that's what will water them and fertilize them. All right, Gavin started at the back end and looks like they're going in really good. That's what the planted buckets look like. We just use the cube to level off the perlite if it's humped up, because when we did fill the buckets, they were kind of rounded. We want them level, and we want to make sure we have good contact with all 4 corners of this cube, so those roots will anchor into that perlite. We use clip rings to keep the plant attached to the bamboo stake. I've shown this in a prior video, but without that, these 15 to 18 inch tall plants would probably fall over. At least eventually they would. So this keeps them in place until we have an opportunity to drop the strings from the trellis, and then we will clip the plant to the string. With 3 people, this process goes pretty quick, but we still got 3 rows to go. I'm gonna jump in there and give them a hand. I'm gonna set you up on time lapse so you can watch us plant all 800 plants really fast. Transplanting is going really well. We are almost ready to wrap it up here in a few minutes. Got about a quarter of a row here and the last half of the row 4. So originally I did not expect to be planting row 4 at all today, but we didn't have one bad plant. Did you guys have one bad plant? One out of 720. No, actually we ended up with 800 plants. I forgot that I had planted some leftovers of Torero that I was gonna throw out when they were just seedlings. So we ended up having over 800 plants and enough to plant all of the first 4 rows. So now we only got 1 row left in here that we'll be planting in about 10 days. I don't know if I've ever had that many perfect plants. Pretty incredible. And here's the one bad one right here. It doesn't have a normal looking top. It's just a bunch of branches and leaves. So yeah, pretty happy with how these look and turned out. And as soon as we finish transplanting, the next step will be to put all the drippers, or the stakes, into cubes to start feeding them and watering them. We'll probably just turn on 1 or 2 rows at a time and put all the drippers into cubes. And if we have a plugged one, we will skip that one and we'll repair it after we finish the row. That way the water is not running for too long of a period. I know I'm going to get the question, why am I growing hydroponics? So this greenhouse originally was a dirt floor. I built this greenhouse in 2002, and for the first 4, maybe 5 years, I grew in the soil. I put down raised beds with plastic mulch and drip tape, and I grew in the soil. I had moderate success. And then a neighboring farm, just like 30 miles down the road, was selling his operation, and I bought his entire hydroponic setup and was able to convert this to hydroponics. And the reason I did that is because our greenhouse number 1 was hydroponics that I put up in 2005, and I was so impressed with how much better my yields were, I thought I would convert this one as well. And I think I did it in 2006 or 7, probably a year or 2 later. And I kid you not, I doubled, maybe even tripled my yields by going hydroponic. This is only for us to have early tomatoes at the farmers markets. So I don't grow them year round. I don't even grow them for 10 or 11 months like a lot of hydroponic growers do. Once we get to mid-August, our field tomatoes will be ready and we will walk away from these and terminate them by usually around Labor Day weekend. And I like to have them all cleaned out by the end of September, sometimes even early September, before all of my help is back in college or high school. So we are really only harvesting tomatoes from about mid-May through the end of August. The hydroponic tomatoes, and then we move into the field tomatoes until frost. A lot of times I will keep one of these greenhouses going until after frost. That way when the field tomatoes are done, I still have a couple more weeks of harvesting in one of these greenhouses. Another question you may be wondering is, what kind of production am I getting? If I'm getting 2 to 3 times better yields than growing in soil, what is that yield? Well, at Crop King, the horticulturalist has a little research greenhouse, and he plants the same varieties I am planting, specifically the Novero and the Ferraria. He got 45 to 55 pounds per plant last year. Now, granted, he is growing for 10 or 11 months and then cleaning it out and starting over. My growing season is June, July, August, September, less than 4 months. So really only about 3.5 months that we're in full production harvesting in here. So we have a very shortened season. So I shoot for 15 pounds minimum, and I think the highest yields I've ever gotten were 21. There's a lot more potential for greater yields than that, but like I said, since we're only harvesting for under 4 months, I'm pretty happy with that. Multiply that times an average of $3 per pound, and that will give you an idea of what kind of dollar amount we're generating per plant. All right, all 800 plants have been put in their buckets, and now we are putting the drippers into the cubes. That's what we want to see. A constant stream or a very fast drip. And we got to make sure we don't mess up a pattern and skip one, as then it'll throw the whole rest of the row off, and we'll have to come back and move them all over one. Man, that one looks slow. Or is it just because it's touching your glove? Yeah, I guess it's all right. So I got Emma at the other end working towards us, and Gavin and I are kind of working together here. There's one that's not flowing right. That one's completely plugged up. So I got to determine if it's here where the hose attaches to the stake or if it's a bad dripper. So the first thing I'll do is pop off the dripper line, and I see that the dripper is good. It's spurting water when I put my hand on it. And then I try to blow through the hose. Nothing. So next I'll pull the stake off. There was some junk in there. Give it a little smack. I think it's all freed up now. All right, I can blow through everything, put it back together. Make sure I can still blow through it. Hear the air going through. Pop it back on the dripper. And now we'll wait and see if the water comes through. And the water is still not coming through. So that tells me that this dripper must be bad. Nope. Gosh, what the heck, man? All right, so I couldn't get this stake cleaned out. This is one of the old styles, and it's just got so much junk in it. You know, I can soak these in a solution to clean them all up. So I got a new one here. Pop it on the hose. Pop the hose on the dripper. And now here in a second, we should get water flow. There it is, fixed. This is greenhouse number 1. Looking beautiful. Someone mentioned in the prior video that they look spindly. That's not true. That's the way they're supposed to look. These are single vine plants. We aren't gonna let any of the suckers bush out. That's the way they are meant to look. They're definitely a little different than your homegrown garden variety of indeterminate tomato plants. All right, let's dig into the grower's choice here. Now that all the tomatoes have been transplanted and drippers have been put into the cubes, I need to set the grower's choice to fertigate the tomatoes on the schedule that I think they need. So I'm gonna go into timed valve, greenhouse number 2. So there's irrigation 1 for this greenhouse, irrigation number 2, enter. I have all 4 greenhouses offset by 6 minutes. That's why the start time says 9:06. And it's going to irrigate to 7:36. I actually need to change that. We want it to be 6 o'clock right now until the days start getting longer. And then I'm going to arrow down to the next screen. We're going to set that on 40 minutes because that's what I have greenhouse number 1 set at, and the grape house. I want them all on the same cycle length. So every 40 minutes. And this is what it was set up last year at the end of August when we were still in full production. So probably don't need to be quite that high. We're going to go to a minute 30 for the minimum irrigation cycle when it's below 67 degrees. And when it's above 78 degrees, which it will be today, it's almost there now, at least inside the greenhouse. We're going to go to, how about a 2-minute irrigation time, length of time. Save that. Back to the main screen. Turn on the toggle for irrigation 2. It's on auto. So every 40 minutes, that greenhouse will be watered for somewhere between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes. And then I also have to turn on the irrigation toggle to auto. So there's on. Right now it's drawing down the tank. It's irrigating the entire greenhouse right now. Tank A, tank B, pH down, which is just sulfuric acid. So I'm gonna put that on auto. Everything is now set on auto, but I am still going to check everything periodically throughout the day because those buckets are very dry. Like I mentioned earlier, the perlite has not been pre-wetted. It's very dry and it wicks the moisture right out of those cubes. So if I determine later on that the irrigation cycle I have set right now for 1 minute 30 up to 2 minutes, every 40 minutes, if that is not enough to keep those cubes nice and wet, and or maybe I see the plants starting to wilt a little bit, I'll just go along and I'll feel them. So I'll go into the greenhouse and I'll feel the cube and actually pick it up. And if I think it feels a little bit dry or not wet enough, I will up that cycle maybe every 30 minutes, or I'll make the minimum 2 minutes and the maximum 2 minutes and 30 seconds, for example. All right, just taking one final look at them before I head in for lunch. I really like how everything turned out. These look absolutely beautiful. It's almost hard to believe that in 10 short weeks, we should be harvesting red, ripe, juicy tomatoes out of this greenhouse. And that should set us up for having gobs of tomatoes in early June, which is during strawberry season here in northwest central Ohio. So that'll be perfect timing. I hope you guys enjoyed the transplanting process of our hydroponic tomatoes today, and I hope you'll learn something. However, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below in the comment section, and I will do my very best to answer any questions you may have. I've been doing this for nearly 25 years. And a lot of it comes second nature to me, and I know I go over things a little quickly sometimes without explaining them as good as I should. I think this is where we're going to wrap up today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you all again real soon down on the farm.